There are people left behind in the responses in terms of technology. They might have lost their belongings. They don't have a phone anymore. They don't have a computer anymore. And even if the responders get access to this technology, if people don't, then they are left behind because they can use connectivity and technology means to get back on track.
This is the Digital Humanitarian, where we explore how technology is transforming crisis response.
When a disaster hits, the first thing people lose is connection, not just to the internet, but to each other. Without communication, relief stalls, chaos spreads, and lives are left in limbo. Armando Samayoa is the regional director at Télécoms Sans Frontières, or TSF, and he's been deploying communication lifelines into some of the most devastated places in the world. In this episode, we go back to 2019 to the Bahamas following Hurricane Dorian. Armando, first of all, thank you very, very much for being here. And maybe just to set the scene, when Hurricane Dorian hit, what was really happening on the ground? I mean, what was going on and how did TSF get involved?
Yeah, well, thanks, Anna, for having me here. It's a pleasure to chat with you again. When Dorian hit, it was very confusing because we didn't have a lot of information. Like, we knew that Hurricane Category 4 hit the Bahamas, but since the Bahamas, it's archipelagos composed of hundreds of islands, we didn't know exactly where the main impact was. It was on a weekend, so we started assessing remotely, but we decided very quickly that we needed to move, even with not a lot of information. So we decided to move two teams, one coming from Mexico and one coming from France, to Nassau. As soon as we saw that the airport at Nassau was operational, we flew people in, and we managed to get both teams arriving almost at the same time. Again, we didn't have a lot of information. We knew that one of the islands in the north was very hardly affected, the island of Abaco, but not much more information than that. So we got into Nassau. The main goal, getting to the capital, was exactly that, getting to know responders being deployed and getting to have more information on what was happening.
So it's really, first of all, getting to the ground to try and figure out what's happening. When you get there, what do you see in terms of NEMA, in terms of comms, in terms of teams on the ground?
We started chatting with our colleagues from the United Nations, since we normally do that. Sometimes they request our assistance. Sometimes we just share information, and with any other friend organization that we know that's deploying. So we start to try to get some intelligence on what's going on and how we better help, because we fly with light equipment, but that is very portable. And then we can decide where's the best place to set the equipment. We got to know by the United Nations where the location of the coordination center was. So it was at the beginning at the NEMA headquarters in Nassau. So we got into the room. There were not many international actors yet that had arrived to Nassau. It was ongoing, and we participated in the first briefing, and we very quickly got to know that they had not much information from what was happening in Abaco. They had deployed a team that had arrived that very morning into Abaco, but they couldn't communicate with that team. After participating on the meeting, we went to present ourselves to the NEMA, who was at that time supported by CDMA, which is the regional emergency management agency. It's a Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, and by PDC. It's an American-based NGO research center, Pacific Disaster Center, who were helping them on the coordination, on the logistics, etc. So we present ourselves. We got out of the room, and right away, a guy from PDC, Brad, we're still friends, got a hold on us, and he said, like, you know what, that we just discussed, you need to be on the next flight to Abaco, because we need to know what's happening there, and we need to set communications up, and that's priority now.
I know very well what you guys do because as an aid worker in the field, I've experienced your amazing kind of services. But maybe tell me, what is it, like you said, you have two teams from Mexico, from France, coming to the ground with suitcases, James Bond suitcases, and you guys set up communications. Tell me, what does this mean when he tells you, okay, you're on the next flight to Abaco? What is the intention?
Well, we've been supported by satellite companies from a long time ago, almost from the beginning. TSF was created in 1998, and it was created out of a need sense on the field. The founders started providing humanitarian help in the Balkans, in Bosnia, with another organization from the south of France. And people just start asking them to use their phones or to send messages when they got back to France to just make a phone call or send a message to their relatives telling them that they were right or that they needed help. So they sensed that need and they communicated with satellite companies, and they got supported because like no one else was doing this. So they started to bring technologies to the field. The technologies had evolved. At the beginning, it was mainly there were some antennas called the mini-Ms, and they allowed you to do phone calls. It was not the traditional satellite phone, but it was like a laptop size and shape antenna. You deployed it, and then you plugged an analog phone to it, and then you were able to perform phone calls. And they brought this to help people to communicate on the field. So those were the first operations. Then the technologies evolved, and we partnered with the United Nations. I think it was 2003 to support them with the communications for the coordination. And ever since we've done both, support the community, the affected community, and the responders. Not only the United Nations, but the responders as a whole. Sometimes it's through the United Nations because they normally, in big emergencies, set up the coordination hub for the humanitarian community. So we support that. But in other emergencies, we might support the local authorities, the local responders, or other NGOs individually, etc. So we do this by bringing mainly satellite means to the field. So we move as fast as we can.
You guys come, you send teams that are agile and quick and can get to places quickly with suitcases that have communication means, satellite and whatnot. And now Sedima tells you, hey guys, we need you deployed at Abaco. We don't know what's happening there. We need someone to help us restore communications so we can see what's happening on the ground. So tell me about this. How does this look like?
Yeah, well, they say like we need to fly you in as soon as possible. So this afternoon, so we had just a couple of hours to prepare. So 2 hours later, they were in the airport, and they were deployed to Abaco. We knew that the situation was very complicated.
And I guess your team gets to Abaco, right? And you're saying it's interesting that you say, like this helicopter was carrying essential aid, water and relief items, but they really needed technology as well because, they realized how essential this is, and this is where you guys come in. The team gets to Abaco, and now the first thing you need to do is you need to start setting up terminals, right? Setting up the antennas. How does this look like? Is this something that happened instantaneously?
Almost, because this technology was quite recent in 2019. We might have been using it for a year or so. It was a game changer at the time because before this technology, and that's what I was trying to explain before, you had just two options. Either really big and really heavy to get good connectivity, or very, very portable and very small. Portable at the time because traveling with just 25 kilos cases was very portable. Easy to deploy, well, easy if you have the know-how, but it could be set up in 15 to 20 minutes. So we set it up at the coordination center. So 20 minutes before our arrival to the coordination center, they were connected, and they could start sending the first assessments to the capital. And then there's when they could start to really plan on the next steps.
It's really amazing. Within 15 minutes, they are already connected back to mainland or to the capital. And you're supporting the coordination mechanism, but you're also supporting the first responders, right? And those displaced people with the technology you're bringing.
Yes, because it was agreed with NIMA and with CIDIMA that this place was going to be the coordination hub for the humanitarian community. So other organizations coming in to help meetings, etc., they also benefited from the connectivity until another humanitarian hub was decided. That's also something important about the portability, because the same way that we set it up in 20 minutes, we can take it down in 5 minutes and then set it up again in somewhere else. That's what we did actually after a week or so, or a week and a half.
You just moved to another location where it was needed to enable the work.
We got the other antenna I told you about, the one of the big ones coming in a WFP chip. And then we took that one and used it as a more permanent solution at this CIDIMA coordination center. And that's when we got requested, we got asked to support UN to set up the connectivity at the Humanitarian Coordination Hub, which was set up at the government municipality in Abaco. We installed the big antenna at the NIMA coordination center, and once we were sure that it was functioning, then we moved the portable antenna to the UN coordination hub.
To where it's needed, it's portable. You can move it around. I know, Armando, you've been doing this for many years before and many years since. But was there something? I think Dorian was very unique in its strength and its magnitude and its the impact, the sheer destruction that was brought upon. Is there something that you can really say that stayed with you from this, especially from the technological perspective and what you were able to bring forward?
Well, there were many things. Like every emergency, it's different. In this one, it was very, very interesting to see the international community support, especially the American support, since it's very close to the U.S. So many people were coming in and trying to help and providing the support that they could provide in terms of logistic means. That was very, very interesting, because like they brought chips, jacks, helicopters, and they were all helping to bring aid into Abaco. So that was very interesting, and also that there was another coordination mechanism taking place that was not part of the traditional coordination mechanism, and that was also very interesting to see, because at some point, for example, for our own needs, because we had a member of the team who got severely injured during the mission, we needed to evacuate him from Abaco and fly him into Nassau again, and it was impossible to do it through the commercial airlines. It was impossible, and through the traditional coordination mechanism, we couldn't, because they offered us help, but he couldn't fly into a medvac helicopter. So we need to find other means, and we got to see that it was a co-coordination between Team Rubicon and the other organization. It was like a VIP terminal at the Nassau airport, but that was transformed in a humanitarian terminal. When we got there, just during this evacuation, we got to see that they were also in need of communication at that terminal. We coordinate with other communication actors because we have direct relationships, or because they are part of the ETC, the Emergency Telecoms cluster. We coordinate in terms of the capacity it's needed. So we might have our capacity completely utilized, but there might be someone else, I don't know, NetHope, Vodafone Foundation, Ericsson Response, I don't know, that might have needs. So we coordinate with them and we say, like, here is a need. So if you can support, then you can come, and that's basically what we did. And at that time, also with an organization that's called HELP, to have that terminal at the airport covered. So that was very interesting to see other actors, new actors, helping with means, and that we could coordinate, and everything happened very fast. So as soon as we detected new needs in terms of communications, we were able to coordinate through these several mechanisms that were taking place.
And it's really interesting, Armando. It sounds like you're saying, listen, with just a little bit of technology, we were able to kind of transform completely a major relief operation. And we're a small team and we're just a few organizations maybe doing the same. But it sounds like it's so easy. And I'm wondering, why isn't this a standard? Why isn't it more common, that in every major disaster or small disaster, first of all, people come in and set up communications?
Well, I think it's going to be more common now that new technologies are emerging, but it was a matter of preparedness, I will say, and also of financial needs, because satellite communications were very expensive.
And this is before, just to say, this is before SpaceX came in, and we can talk about that in a second as well. But this is even before, when it was really expensive.
It was before low Earth orbit technologies. Starlink is one of them, but there are others coming, OneWave, Project Cuniper. So it's going to be easier and less expensive. But it was very, very expensive. Just to give you an idea, the really smart portable half a mega bandwidth terminal that I told you about, it costs about $5 a mega. Let's say that you used a giga a day, which now a giga is not much. You were paying $5,000 a day on communication.
Crazy.
So it was crazy. And not everyone could afford that. Even if they had the equipment, they were very selective on how to use it. In 2021, 2022, we did a project that covered two regional entities, two regional bodies. So CDMA for the Caribbean, since they learned and we learned also from that experience that they needed capacity. So we proposed them to have the same type of equipment that we flew for Dorian. We provide them with two of those terminals, and then also low Earth orbit terminals. And now, for example, for burial last year, they flew some of the capacity themselves. So now they have this capacity, and it's the same for Asia, AHA Center, which is part of ASEAN. And just now, they are responding to the earthquake in Myanmar, and they are using also this capacity themselves as regional responders. So it's changing, especially now that they have the means and that they can make it affordable and sustainable in the midterm or the long term. So I think it's becoming more standard now, but it was difficult back then.
It makes sense. It sounds like, it goes back to when you're saying, listen, portability was an issue and strength, and then we got to the step where it's portable and it's powerful, but it's still expensive. And where do you see this going? So now we're in 2025. I think we're already kind of well into the future of that conversation. Where do you see technology going? Where do you see, especially STSF and you guys operating at the edge of this, with Starlinks, with everything that's coming forward?
Well, for example, we at TSF, we have three programs. One is connectivity, which is what we've been talking about. So bringing connectivity means to the field, mainly in emergency responses or sudden emergencies, but we also use it for population movements and other type of crisis, armed conflict. But we do have two other programs. One is digital inclusion, and the other one is access to information. But these two programs, we normally run them in other type of crisis, in complex crisis or protracted crisis, where we have the time to set it up and we have to study the needs, etc. Because it was not possible to do it on emergency response. But I think as we move forward and with these new capacities, we might be able to do it for relief responses as well, because there are people left behind in the responses in terms of technology. They might have lost their belongings. They don't have a phone anymore. They don't have a computer anymore. And even if the responders get access to this technology, if people don't, then they are left behind because they can use connectivity and technology means to get back on track, to get a hold of their relatives, to find a job, to find opportunities, to find help, to help others as well, because sometimes they have the willingness and the means to help others in their communities. I will say that the digital inclusion or breaking the digital divide in relief, it will become more possible as technologies evolve. Access to information, it's also important, and having connectivity, we might be able to bring information to people, because sometimes the humanitarian community, not say that it's happy, but focus on the basic needs, which I think it's important. But then after a few days, people who are already fed, who already have clothes and medical assistance or first aids for the first few days, they need to know what's happening back at their communities, when they will be able to get back. If there was an outbreak from a disease, they need to know if it has been controlled, if there will be governmental help, if there's help coming from the international community, NGOs bringing medical teams, psychosocial support, how needed it is. But sometimes people don't know that this exists and they need information. So in these temporary shelters, if they are well equipped, then people can access the technology, can access the information. So I think this is what we could see more of. And other technologies, for example, remote psychosocial support.
Telehealth, right? Armando, thank you. Just to give another perspective for this question, so I'm just going to go ahead to ask it about like the technology and what's coming next, all right? So Armando, I know that you guys at TSF, you're really at the edge of this, of technology and bringing this to the field. And I'm wondering, what do you see next? Is it better technologies? And if so, what are we looking at? Is it giving more access to the communities and to everyone? Is it connecting people? Is it more of private sector maybe? Is it more of localization? What do you see next when we're looking at the cusp of disaster response and technology?
I think all of that. I think it's more participation of the private sector, as well as more localization. Localization is very important because, and we've done this in the latest emergencies we respond to. Now we're able to leave technology behind. So we can coordinate with local communities, and then it's not like if we're there just for a few weeks and then we leave the community behind, but we can coordinate with them and we can leave equipment and capacity behind, and they can use it in the midterm, and this allows for sustainability. And then when the emergency is progressing to other stages, to recovery, reconstruction, then they can continue using it.
So you mean you're actually bringing the technology to the field?
Yes.
You're leaving it in the field for them to continue using it,
yeah.
Getting prepared, getting ready, and if something hits, they're already on top of it.
Yes, that's what we've tried to do in the latest emergencies.
And in terms of the technology, where do you see us heading? I mean, in terms of technological advancements and what we can bring.
In terms of connectivity, it's hard to imagine more advanced technology than what we have now, these low orbit technologies. There are some that are going to be more directed to the general public. There are some others that are going to be directed to governments and emergency responders. The interesting part is going to be how it's going to be used in terms of restrictions or access when an emergency happens. We are seeing it in Myanmar. It's not easy. It's not easy. So this needs to evolve. The technology is there. But sometimes for political reasons, it's not being used or it's not being allowed to use. So this needs to evolve because now usage is negligence, in my opinion. But in terms of the technology itself, it's there, at least the first wave. In many cases, this capacity is bigger than what was there before in terms of local infrastructure. So what are you going to do with it? It's not just a few phone calls and WhatsApp messages. It's really what you're bringing in terms of medical capacity, in terms of psychosocial support capacity, access to information. As I said, how are you lowering the digital divide or shortening the digital divide, etc. So I think it's more in that sense that we have to think of now.
We're looking a lot into telehealth and NGOs and organizations that are working in this space.
Yeah.
And I think the impact you can bring with that, like you're saying, is wonderful.
Yes.
So, Armando, I want to ask you, you are now in a situation, you're in Nassau, there's no communication, they cannot communicate with Abaco, and you're being sent to Abaco to set up communication systems. What is the impact of what you were able to do? I know you said in 15 or 20 minutes you were already able to set up the platform and everyone were able to communicate. So what does this actually look like in the field in terms of the response and what they're doing?
It looks like what relief looks like. You're responding to an essential need, and you see it in the faces of the people, even in the responders. You see the relief in their faces because now they have the information, because they have a lot of pressure. They want to respond, but they are not able to. And also the media is asking them what they're doing, what the situation is, and they cannot respond, and that's very frustrating. So now when they have the information, now they can say, okay, now we know what's happening, and now we have a plan. And now we know what the plan is, and we know what the team on the field has been doing. That's one side of it, but you also see the relief on the faces of the responders themselves individually, like people from Nima who were able themselves to communicate with their families back at home. Like you see them in the evening gathering at this area where the antenna is and just communicating with their families, etc. It makes a big difference. Then another part of the mission that I haven't mentioned is that I think the day after we set up the communications, once we flogged the second team into Abaco, then we started to look on what the remaining needs were in terms of the affected community. And there were some schools that were transformed into shelters, schools that were partially destroyed, which could still serve as shelters. We started going to perform, we call them humanitarian calling operations there, and we use satellite phones because every time it's different. Sometimes you think that you're responding to the community needs just by bringing connectivity, for example, but you need to take in account that maybe people back at home doesn't have internet connectivity, so they can just receive phone calls. So they cannot receive a WhatsApp call or a WhatsApp message. So sometimes internet, it's not responding to all the needs that there are. So people remaining at the schools were mainly foreigners who were afraid of being detained or deported. So they stayed and they needed help.
Basically, the most vulnerable population are the ones who stay because they fear.
Yes, wow. Exactly. Once they get guarantees from the government that they were not going to be deported, then they started to evacuate. But that wasn't evident, and that's why information is very important, because people are in danger just by not having the right information. So we broke the satellite phones. We performed these operations, and they called back home in Haiti or in other places. And you saw also the relief on their faces and the joy when they were able to communicate with others, because fortunately there was a lot of damage during Dorian, but not as many casualties. So when people got to communicate that they were alive, that they were all right, they might be injured, but out of major danger, it was a very cheerful moment, yes.
Sounds like a very cheerful moment, and it's relief. Basically, you're saying It's relief at the response level, at the personal level, at the human level. Communication and digitization of the operation just brings relief. Like you're saying, you've seen how quickly things can shift from complete chaos to order and information.
Yes.
Now, if you want to maybe give one word of advice to those who are now listening or watching this podcast, what can they do to bridge this digital gap or, to bring more of this kind of relief to their operations?
Preparedness, for me, it's not everything, but I will say it's more than half of it. Like you need to be prepared. You need to learn from previous operations. In terms of technology, preparing is to get the right equipment, to have it ready, to test it, to be ready to depart with it, because it's even hard to understand, but you see it a lot. In every emergency, you see organizations having the means, but not preparing to the next one. and you see them deploying to the next emergency with the same problem as in the last emergency. But honestly, with the new technologies, everyone can learn how to use them. It's not waiting for the next emergency to take the equipment out of the box. It depends on the capacity, but it's every month or at least every 3 months I take it out, test it. Sometimes there's an update that you're not aware of, and instead of waiting for the next emergency after, I don't know, a year or a couple of years, and then bring the equipment out and see that it's not charged, that it doesn't have the latest firmware, it doesn't have the latest updates, and then try to do it. That sometimes it's impossible to do it from the field, and it takes a lot of time. And if you had that preparedness or that reflex of have everything ready, then instead of taking, I don't know, half a day or a day to get connectivity up and running, it will take just 10 to 15 minutes if you are well prepared. So I will say it's preparedness and then innovation, and not like, it's hard to imagine what's coming next because it's been a big step forward. But again, what you're doing with it. So innovate in terms of how you're using these with others, like alliances, partnering with other organizations, local organizations as well, having their thoughts or their ideas or their needs listened to and coordinate with them from before the emergency. For example, after this project that I told you about, it was sponsored by the Internet Society Foundation. We had a second one. The first one was the one that I told you where we brought capacity to the regional bodies. Then the second one, it's about also equipping places that might be community shelters with this capacity that, as I say, now it's affordable and it's easy enough to deploy. Then we are partnering in Mexico with local NGOs, like at the community level, and then in Costa Rica and Jamaica with the national societies of the Red Cross in each country. The people, they have the knowledge, they have the capacity. Last year, there was a shelter in Jamaica. We were drafting this project actually, and we brought some capacity to Jamaica, and then it became immediately part of the project because they needed connectivity at this shelter. They had everything that they needed. The shelter was not damaged, but they couldn't open it because they didn't have power or electricity and they didn't have connectivity. So if they will have had it before, then this shelter will be ready to shelter people. But in this occasion, they had to wait for 2 weeks until they were able to shelter people at these facilities. So again, prepare, be innovative, be ready to invest on it, because we know, and we say it every time in every after-action review, after-action meeting, that preparedness will have saved lives, that it will have cost a third of what was spent on the actual response, and its investment done in preparedness is very impactful. But we still don't do it because you don't know. Like, sometimes the funding is done in yearly basis or biannual basis, triennial basis in the best case scenario, and you don't know if in those 3 years you're going to see an emergency happening in the places where you've prepared. But you never know. You have to lose this attachment to immediate results.
All right, Armando, thank you very, very much. It's been a fascinating discussion, always interesting to talk to you. And I personally seen your work and experienced your work firsthand in the field. So for me, it's definitely that sigh of relief that I'm very familiar with. So thank you.
No, thank you, Dana, for this invitation. It was very, very nice to talk to you again, and happy to do it every time.
Disasters are often unpredictable, but response efforts don't have to be. If you're a part of an aid organization, having the right digital tools can mean the difference between chaos and coordinated action. If you need practical tools for your organization's disaster management, visit mondayert.org. And if you enjoyed this, please share it with one colleague or friend who'd find it useful.